Welcome to Fockers, the go-to place for on-chain games. With me today is Ben, founder of Cambria. What's up?
Hello, how's it going? Good to be back.
Yeah, you've been staying busy, that's for sure. You had the VC raise, which we'll talk about, and of course the land mint, which is a major moment for any crypto game project. So congrats to you, and let's dive into the
Thank you.
thick of it. First of all, VC raise. Just looking at the pretty much the entirety of the rest of the crypto gaming market, things are down bad, not able to raise or get top ups from their prior VCs. But you seem to just be pushing full steam blazing ahead with full support. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think number one is just the investors we raised from Bitkraft. They understand gaming. They've been in the gaming space, mostly actually in the Web2 space. They've made a few investments, but I think they've definitely improved their reputation in traditional gaming. And I think that's one of the things that sets them aside from crypto VCs that are investing in gaming. Once the tide washes out, people have less conviction, there's more failures, conviction is bound to slip there. So yeah, I think number one, credit to that, credit to Carlos from the Bitkraft side who led our seed round investment, also did this investment. Yeah, we built a relationship and just them tracking our progress and us updating our investors on what we're seeing. Because yeah, really, it's when it comes to conviction, if you look at the market, of course, right, there's very little to give you signal on, right? Or you're actually getting signal that things are not working. But yeah, I think through the various iterations we've had, because we started this about 2.5 years ago, about less than a year in, we had our first build out. Again, it was very janky, very ugly. It was very simple game loop. I think we only had skilling, wood cutting, and like mining to start. But yeah, immediately being able to put that out to an audience and do testing. I think you can argue like both ways on this. Some people say there's no way to do an MVP and you can't iterate from MVP because you need immersion, right? So if you don't have enough of the visual quality, enough of the mechanics, people can't get immersed to it, and then you don't have any signal on whether it's fun or not because people don't treat it as real quite yet. I think we got past a lot of that initially with just the way we set up the game. A lot of the basic mechanics were there. We just started with the core and progressively tested various things, whether it's skilling, combat, what have you. So yeah, even early on, sometimes it's hard, right, to really tell in terms of iteration what's clicking, especially with the game in such early state. But yeah, I think we've talked about this in previous podcasts in terms of things that we did see that people were resonating with, the real risk element, the fact that number one with MMO, it's hard to make it tough, hardcore, frustrating because people nowadays just don't have the attention span. Having an initial charterment or some purchase up front really allows you to get people over the hump of that initial difficulty loop. Yeah, the things that you can do with that as a design lever are really exciting. So yeah, I knew that. I think just the various emotions with risk, the social bonds that it created as well, and then the social sort of drama on the other side as well. In some of our playtests, we had whales that got pissed off and were creating bounties against the other players, using the in-game economics to facilitate a lot of that. Yeah, it was just, I felt like we were discovering things that was like, hey, you literally cannot find this in a Web2 game. These are net new experiences and emotions and systems. And yeah, I think it took a few iterations. Season 2 definitely was our big spike upwards, 5 to 10 increase on numbers from season 1. So I think with that, we really proved out, hey, there is something here. It's still early, still 1 or 2 years from really breaking out. But yeah, there's at least something here to invest in. And I don't know, just with the overall market, I think the number of teams that have gotten to a point where there's actually something to analyze, even is a huge first step. And also, I think we're just fortunate to have the right partners and be in the right space at the right time.
Awesome, man. Very happy for you guys. And yeah, all the luck moving forward. You have a bigger war chest to move forward with. Another example of that is the recent land mint, which went very well. I believe it was in minutes. I didn't get to get it on my own,
Yeah.
sadly. So I'm currently landless.
Oh no, NGMI.
So yeah, curious.
Gotta get one off secondary.
I do, I do, I do. So yeah, curious, were there any surprises with the mint process? Maybe the player reception, the early feedback, things that were different from what you had
Yeah.
imagined?
Yeah, I think going into it, just knowing our player base and knowing the excitement that players have for some of the upcoming features and just being able to prove that so far in the past year, Really wasn't worried about not minting out. It was just like sizing. Again, the market was not great. We did have to be realistic. But yeah, I think for this mint, yeah, we are trying to go for, again, building up the war chest. So yeah, very grateful for the community of holders that gave us the vote of confidence there. Yeah, in terms of the structure of the mints, one thing we did run into is with NFT mints these days, you have the guaranteed, the first come, first serve, and now people are over allocating the guaranteed. We called it priority whitelist, priority, and then first come, first served, just to distinguish the fact that it was over allocated. But yeah, it's tricky. In some of the UI, in some of the messaging, we also said GTD. Those common NFTs phrases that went out. So what we ended up doing is we had a second chance mint where, a lot of the NFTs that we were holding in the treasury that we pre-minted, we were able to distribute that based on a variety of factors of whether people had the ETH in their wallet to mint. They were just out of time because obviously we couldn't support all of the interest. But yeah, I think overall it went good. The distribution methodology, like again, heavily indexing on rewarding existing holders, existing participants in the community. It's tricky because sometimes with these mints, you do want to expand the capital base of who is holding your NFTs. And we certainly try to do that, reaching out to certain communities, considering Friends of Cambria and other targeted distribution methods. Yeah, I'd say it's mostly worked out. I think there's a lot of net new people that got introed into the Cambria NFT ecosystem, got intro to our holders, to our community, and got Cambria build, or at least know approximately, right? That's all that matters. I feel like you just repeat it enough times and then enough people have at least a sense for what's happening at Cambria. So yeah, I think from that lens, it was definitely successful. Yeah, it's probably 89% holders wise, existing community members. But yeah, I think that's good. I think, yeah, because anybody who is going to be aligned or interested, they probably already heard of Cambria. So if they're not already invested and involved, this is probably diminishing returns with looking for new holders.
Are there some things that immediately come to mind when it comes to some of the learnings that you've extracted from this mint mechanism that you've put together for the lands that you would maybe suggest other games that do their land in the near future or in the future? Perhaps some things that are just mandatory to do and some things that is just maybe it would have been better to not introduce that mechanism or something.
Yeah, I think one thing we did this time versus last time where we've previously messed up is not rewarding people spreading out the NFTs on multiple wallets. Because again, we don't really know one person equals one person. So I think we had a lot of that last time where people got more spots because they had founders spread on multiple wallets. So I think fixing some of that from feedback. Obviously, we had the luxury of having previous mints. But yeah, I'd say that's one thing. The other thing is, I think in retrospect, would have probably been more aggressive or tighter with the allocation because we were using factors where it was like the past 2 years of game history, season 1, season 2, and then we had the allocation checker. So we had a bit of signal on who actually did intend to mint, but it turned out come mint day, a lot of people just popped out, right? They had the qualification, they didn't do the checker, and for example, just minted, right? Obviously, there's a lot of FOMO, there's a lot of demand around that, but yeah, I don't think we fully expected that. It's definitely a learning opportunity for us. It was something that our holders that were maybe more savvy, maybe traders that gave us the, hey, it's probably gonna go out in minutes, but yeah. The second chance mint was great because we did have some signals of GTD and it was like miscommunication and wanted to obviously treat our partners correctly. But yeah, in terms of distribution, it's always not great. The second chance minter might be someone who wasn't bullish enough to immediately commit, was waiting to see how things went. And it's the earliest minters, that's your strongest signal, right? So I do think we got some lower quality holders that just ended up flipping. But again, it's just like launching a token, right? You can argue both ways on multiple things like distribution, initial airdrop. Yeah, it's tough and definitely a unsolved problem. And you're never going to make people happy. So we kind of shifted, we did another pass, and then we're like, hey, this is what it is, and we'll build from there.
So from reading the article that you posted on the main X account of Cambria, the overall mechanism that powers the lands and then makes them just a strong component in the overall Cambria gameplay and also economy. How I see it, just in very quick, very brief words, is in between the seasons and other mini games that are part of the whole Cambria stack, like the Duel Arena. In these seasons, this is the place that players can call their home. And there
100%.
you can align with a guild, you can just play with friends. There are just several different mechanics that keep you engaged there, both from an active and a passive way, which really scratched my itch as I mostly participate in just the fishing gameplay. So I really enjoy this passive gameplay loops. So yeah, some things that kind of stuck with me from reading that, I did see that you guys put a lot of effort and thought into making sure that the resources that are produced on these islands outside of Cambria seasons, Gold Rush seasons, that the inflation is not too large, where these resources just
Yeah,
become meaningless. I am assuming that the
yeah.
resources that people will be collecting on the islands won't really have interplay with what you need in like gold rush season outside maybe a specific few. I saw that there is a recurring conversion into royal favor, right? Which is like a nice way,
Yeah,
just like a direct sync. I think
yeah,
similar to how Gigaverse has the stubs sync.
exactly.
So syncs are a big thing I've been thinking about the last few months because generally
Yeah,
games that suffer from inflation in crypto is because they didn't think of syncs through well enough.
yeah,
So curious
yeah,
what
yeah.
your approach to ensuring syncs are great. I know not all information is out yet, but just maybe the
Yep.
mental framing of it.
Yeah, and just for context for those listening who haven't seen the thread, it's 3,333 NFTs that give you dominion over an island. Each of these islands is essentially its own community. So I think the key mechanic here is obviously we expect Cambria to grow to millions of players, right? So this amount of islands is never going to support everyone who wants to buy an island. And with MMOs of this type, islands are just so cool, right? It's like you need to have them for players. So the biggest thing going into this was just, okay, there needs to be unlimited islands that just regular players, non-crypto players, can rate inside of the game and do farming. And I mean, your traditional like land MMO. So the key thing there is these we're calling islets. They can be hitched to these islands. So it's almost like a landlord tenant relationship. You can browse all of the islands that you can attach your islet to, and then based on the taxes, based on the owner's reputation, the building advancement, the structures, a lot of these variables, right? What I really want to see is this become almost like a social thing and as well as a growth thing where, island holders, because they want to maximize the amount of productive activity that they can tax, right? They're actually doing reach out. They're looking for really good players or other players that they think are willing to spend to get them into the community. And then more intangibly, it's almost like the fantasy of, hey, I have this home island that has big production facilities, has refining facilities, has a big dock, that has maybe some social areas like guild halls and whatever. And then I want to see all my islet sub owners come to the main island, maybe refine some goods, maybe hang out at the bar, maybe hang out at guild hall. And then just because everybody to get to their islet, they have to go through the main island and then take another sort of transport to their islet itself. Yeah, just because of that traffic flow, you naturally could log on and see a bunch of people walking around doing things on your island, which I think really makes it social instead of the traditional MMO. So I think, yeah, that's probably the biggest thing. And I think just as a baseline in terms of value accrual moving forward, it's future millions of players, right? They're going to have to go somewhere, right? So even let's say we just charge X amount of silver for people to get an islet and make it obviously easy for Web2 players, right? They don't ever have to interact with crypto, right? So all of that value accrual gets split to island holders. The exact mechanisms of how that would work vary, but I think even as a baseline, even if islands just didn't do anything else, I think that's baseline value accrual that scales again, potential wise with the growth of game. I think in terms of sinks and kind of the economy on top, I really think of it as just another game mode, right? It's another risk to earn sort of game mode, right? Another common pitfall with these things is like just passive yield going to forever and then eventually too much supply. I think it's a combo of, let's say, gold rush, right? I think, again, like we're still playing around with this, so it might change, but I imagine some portion of gold rush, right? Like driving some sinks for islands, whether that be, let's say, a specific resource like sugarcane, right? For example, that's looped into some part of the gold rush economy. Obviously, gold rush balancing from a competitive standpoint is very hard. So we don't want to have too much of this going into islands because otherwise you lose the incoming funnel of people playing, kind of the economics go wrong. But I think if Gold Rush is doing really well, you can have more and more of that, right? And it like drives flywheels with the existing island economy. But again, with the island economy, it's almost there's a lot of mechanics, but I think TLD are like, I want to see alliances of islands and players that are manipulating these trade routes and these resource prices. It's almost like guild scale PvP, right? And the part of that problem is how to make it not 3-3, right? Everybody just doesn't compete with each other and they're just like max farming. You need incentives for people to backstab each other, for people to just leave, break the alliance, and drive at the price of XYZ, right? And then you have actual resource loss, resource sinks that go into the competitive nature of just grabbing the most of the yield, right? So I think it's a tricky design problem. I don't know when it gets to just balance, like there's more sinks than sources, right? But I think in the meantime, there's a lot we can cover by just using Gold Rush, using other ways to drive demand. Again, with island resources, as long as there's not a one-to-one peg, we're not applying this to a token that we're putting on launching on the blockchain or something. If it's just not going well and there's not enough demand, it just eventually gets burnt, right? Almost like the seasonal model. You need the resets, right? You have to have people take losses. You have to have The resources cycle through the ecosystem. You can't just hold on to it in your bank forever. And I think there's ways we can rationalize that inside the game, right? So if you have a bunch of sugar canes, you can't just keep it on your island forever, waiting for the right moment to cash it out. It rots, right?
Yeah, I enjoyed the rotting mechanic in some of the games, especially around food.
Yeah.
I really enjoy preparing where I know that we're
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
go to a dungeon or we're gonna go PvP with a buddy. So I need to
Yeah.
make an effort to put 30 minutes earlier in the day to catch enough high-level fish
Yes.
for us
Yes.
and cook them. I
Yeah.
enjoy that aspect of the game sometimes more than the actual what comes after.
And it's social for you too, right?
It's
You're like,
social.
hey, I'm helping out my buddies.
Exactly. Looking at the different things that will be on these islands, I mean, the docks, the overlook dungeons, capital settlements, there's a lot. So, of course,
Yeah.
there are different tiers to the islands themselves.
Yeah.
But sometimes when games launch their lands, what they do is a random assortment of resources available on different lands,
Yeah.
even outside of strict
Yeah.
tier systems. I'm curious, how did you
Yeah.
approach this? Are there going to be some, even among, let's say, the top 25 lands? I forget the name for that
Yeah.
high tier, like crown lands or
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
they're called. Would these
Eliminate.
vary in what's available in one, it's not available in another?
Yeah, so actively thinking through it, but I think with the tiers, what I really want it to become is the higher tiers. It's almost like status, right? It's the intangibles of just being, let's say, a senator from New York, right? Versus Montana. Technically, you're equal, but really you have more weight, whether that's governance, however it plays out in game. That's how I think of things, right? I think with the impact on yield, the other thing is it shouldn't be scaling. It needs to be additive, or it needs to be, hey, instead of having the capacity of having one refining building, you would have 5, right? But there's only 25 crown dividends, right? It's not like you can really gain a massive edge there. I think right now we're trying to figure out having enough space just to even support multiple guild halls. Somebody has a network of guilds, having enough docks to support everybody coming to the island. It's like those sort of things. But also in terms of the biggest asset owners, the biggest whales, they're looking for certain things in terms of status, just being able to flex. It's really intangible things like that. I feel like previous designs, it's almost been lazy, right? The easiest way we can drive rarity and how you do these things is, oh, now you have 25x times something more resources. And now either you have that island or you're fucked, right? I think, yeah, that's the dynamic that we're trying to avoid.
Awesome. I want to dig into like comparisons to some of the traditional games that I'm familiar with that have some
Yeah.
level of islands per se.
Yeah.
So the two that immediately come to mind, one is RuneScape with player housing, and the other
Yeah.
one is Club Penguin with the igloos. So yeah,
Love it.
first of all, RuneScape. In general, players of Gold Rush and also Duel Arena, if you're familiar with how this works, how these game modes work in RuneScape, you're quite familiar with the onboarding flow and general rule set of Cambria. So I'm curious what the
Yeah.
comparisons are between the
Yeah.
RuneScape player housing and the Cambria construction and whatnot on the
100%.
islands
100%.
themselves.
Yeah, I think don't fix what's not broken. I think we're definitely driving heavy inspiration from construction and RuneScape. Some of the best moments in RuneScape was you go to the portal, you enter the code, you teleport to your friend's house, he's doing a party. Just some of the rooms having the duels, right? Just hangout rooms. I think in terms of functionality for the player-owned housing on the island, probably it's going to look more like RuneScape Construction than anything else. It's basically very modular. You have the plots. You can choose what to build on the plots. You can choose what objects for each section of that house. I did dislike RuneScape's. It looked very blocky, right? Just because of how modular it was. Trying to make it a little more natural looking. In terms of the implementation. And like Club Penguin didn't play too much, but I do remember you could basically get a bunch of rares, cosmetics, and put them inside your house, right? Decorate your house. And it was the expression of personality, right? That's just the slam dunk sort of loop, right? Find unique things inside of Gold Rush or other game modes, put them in your house. Definitely looking for more of that. But yeah, I'd say in terms of the islands, especially for the regular players, the islets, I think gameplay wise, it's probably going to look pretty similar to, for example, Albion, right? The islands. So you have various plots. You can construct various buildings on those plots. You can develop those buildings. You can farm, herd animals, all that good stuff. By the way, I just noticed your background is islands. That's so good.
Yeah, I think I said this because I did a little interview with Amit from Pirate Nation yesterday,
Oh, nice. Yeah.
doing the tropical vibe.
Two birds, one stone. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. So two things that really attracted me to player housing in RuneScape. One was the ability to pray. This is like what, a decade ago when I was playing, but I remember correctly the mechanism for the praying skill, a prayer
Yep.
skill. which is kind of also
You
in
could level it up.
Cambria with burying the bones, and then you
Yeah.
can activate this passive effects, and it drains your
Yes.
prayer points. You spend a lot of time burying bones if you want to go to high level
Yeah.
praise code.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what you could do is you could come to an altar of a specific god and pray or bury bones in front of the altar. And I think some
Right.
of the very high level players had their own special altars installed at their
Yes.
house. So people would just congregate around these altars in player houses
Yep.
and do that
Yep.
activity there. This is then connected to a skill, right? Which I'm not sure what the interplay will be between the islands and the
Yeah.
actual skills
Yeah.
in between gold rushes.
Yep.
Are you thinking of introducing some aspects of things like that?
Yeah, for sure. I think with, let's say for Gold Rush, right? There's parts of the progression that are not super tied into the balancing. Really, when we balance the expeditions, the baseline is assuming people have max levels, right? The max skiers are going to the highest tier regions. Because prior to that, the stakes are so low that it doesn't matter too much. What this ends up creating for Gold Rush as well, you need to spend at least a bit of time or buy the XP lamps that get you to max level. You're working at a loss for a little bit, almost like Axie, right? You have to buy an Axie first. You have to do some investment that kind of gets you to parity with the rest of the players. How long that takes, some people just have a lot of time. Just don't want to spend anything and they have a lot of time to grind. For those people that don't, instead of doing XP lamps, like you said, I think that would be really cool. Just integrating islands into it, and then it's not directly unbalancing the competitive aspect of Gold Rush, just allowing you to skip, the pay to skip, convenience sort of utility. Yeah. And then, like you said, obviously the social element and just seeing other people using your land is always fun.
Yeah. Something that comes to mind, I really think this is a nice thing to laser in on, is essentially be able to produce things on the islands in between active seasons that speed up your gameplay in the actual like
Yes.
expedition
Yes.
mode. So I spent my childhood playing free-to-play MMOs, so I saw a lot of that. One thing that I always really enjoyed, there was this one specific game where if you spent the starter pack you would get with your first purchase of the kind of currency was a set of armor that's tied to the general class you want to level up in, that grows
Yeah.
with you. Or like
Wow.
you're a level 10 rogue, or you're focusing on daggers or bows or something, and the armor will be developing in that way and will be growing with each level. And that's a non-tradable thing.
Right.
Another one is a pickaxe that grows with you, that levels up with you instead of the player needing to make sure he has different pickaxes for different levels. It just grows with him. Simple
Yeah.
things like that are not
Yeah.
tradable, don't really impact the in-game balance, are
Yep.
basically on the same level as other items in the game. The player just doesn't need to go out
Yeah.
and hunt for them. This grows with them. So
Yeah.
a lot of different things you can introduce so that players can
For sure.
potentially produce on the islands.
Yeah, for sure. I was gonna say, I almost think of it as well, like the AI agent, right, playing for you, right? The gameplay there. I think in terms of gameplay like that, either you have players that just actually want to play the gameplay, or players that just want to skip. I feel almost skipping the AI agents or the bot side of things. Let's say it was like refining, right? You just ship it off to your island and have your island AI stewards do all the stuff, and then they just ship it back to you, right? Like skipping steps in game, like you're saying. Yeah, that's real utility, and that's especially for a certain type of player, utility that they would pay for. So I think that's along those lines. I think, yeah, another exciting part of Island.
And then if we talk briefly about the Club Penguin case, from my experience,
Yeah.
Club Penguin, everybody had their own igloo, different sizes. Igloo was also the base where you would leave your pets. So you would generally
Yep.
go there and feed them. And
Yeah.
then you'd have one pet
Yeah.
that was just with you, going around with you on the
Right.
world map and
Right.
whatnot. But the others had to be in the igloo. That's something I really enjoyed as
Yes.
a kid. Another one is,
Love.
this is something you already mentioned, being able to flex some special collectibles that you've received in the active expeditions in the gold rush seasons, and then being able to like place this head of a boss on
Yep.
your wall for everyone to look at,
Yep.
things like that. Or let's say you collected 1,000 rockfish during the expedition. Bam, there's a special collectible that you can put a big rockfish on the
Yep.
wall. A lot of things you can do there just from the flex perspective. I spent a chunk of my playtime in Club Penguin as a kid just chilling at other people's igloos and looking at all the cool shit they have. There would always be a guy penguin who owns the island, who owns the igloo, and then a girl penguin dancing on the dance ground. You would
Yeah,
always build a
girls.
dance ground. It was like a
Yeah,
little
yeah.
disco zone. Some igloos were huge, where it's made up of 10 normal igloos. It was like going to a party. you're not invited to. You would like chill
Yeah.
on the side. You would just look at.
I think that ability to host things, you're the guy who can host these things because you have the cities, right? I think that is just social as human beings. Yeah, the pet limit and hosting most of your islands on the pet, that we also have Cambria companions. Think about integrations there. I really like that angle of you can do everything as a base player, but if you want to either stockpile or hoard a bunch of things or just have 2,000 pets, right? Or have a bunch of these collectible achievement items that you just can't fit in your bank because of the bank limit, right? Hey, you get an island, you have shit ton of a storage room, you could put all this shit in your dungeon, you can put it in your main house. I mean, that's just super cool to me.
Yeah, so much you can do. I'm really excited
Yeah.
to dive deeper into it all. Another thing that I believe was in RuneScape housing, I'm pretty sure, but it's a general aspect that was accessible in Falador in the city. It was a
Yep.
place where it was a party drop zone, or what it was called, balloon party,
Yeah.
where you have drop parties. I spent
Yeah.
so much time there as a kid. Essentially, for those who are not familiar, it was a little room, a little house in a city accessible on the world map. Falador,
Yeah.
the most beautiful city
Yes.
in RuneScape, in my opinion.
Yep.
And in this house, you had a little chest where players could deposit different things. Some players deposited very rare things, but a lot of gold and a lot of shit stuff. Even as a low level player, you
Yeah.
wouldn't something you had like an amulet or and then there was a little
Yeah.
countdown. And when the countdown reached
Yeah.
zero, the party started and like balloons started getting dropped. And the first
Yeah.
one that comes and clicks on a balloon on the floor, pops it, and you get the item. And that was just so catchy. I would just go there with friends and like chill at these areas. So this is something
Yeah.
you can totally do, I think, on the
Yeah.
island because
Yes.
the guilds want to reward their kind of like low level players, let's say. And this is just
Yep.
a great way.
Dude, I love this sort of stuff because gaming is always looking for something where it doesn't get boiled down to just a number, right? I think the closer you get to, hey, this is just DeFi, right? I'm getting X for Y input, the more boring it is. So how do you create these situations where people are just happy to, for example, people doing drop party, what do they get from it? Nothing. But they get to go to the Grand Exchange and they'd be like, drop party, 100 bill, whatever. And then obviously they would have to have a party hat or something that indicated that this guy's not just fucking around. Some big whale is going to do a drop party. And then obviously the drop party participants have a chance to win something. Yeah. One of the cooler parts of gaming experiences, and I think something that aligns really well with islands.
Yeah, man, just an overall very fun thing. You can
Yeah.
continue developing and something that's just there throughout
Yeah.
whatever else you guys are building. But it is probably like a little point of stress now that you have something that's just always going to be there that you can't balance in between
Yep.
downtime, similar to like eventually launching a token.
Yep.
We are still not there.
Yep. Yep.
So it's another thing to maintain. But I guess the
Yeah.
bigger war chest allows you to focus on more things. But yeah, very
Yeah.
hopeful that this goes well. And yeah, maybe as a final note, something that I've enjoyed recently, I think the Kamigochi founder just released a little written post, I think it was yesterday or today, just some of the kind of thoughts that she's having, some of the potential stresses in terms of being at this point in crypto gaming. Do you have some worries, some things that occupy your mind, maybe not a positive manner, some things
Yeah.
you're kind of struggling with a bit?
Yeah. I think yeah, in the current market, it's definitely tough. There's a lot you can control, and it does actually have real impact just because game is tied to crypto. Besides that, just the unknowns and trying to account for the unknowns. I think with the way we're going, it's to a point where we're not reliant on, let's say, the more speculative or, hey, is ETH going up sort of part of crypto, right? It's going to be a combination of mostly Web2 audiences, right? Where the game is just risk to earn. Really, crypto is just the financial structure underneath how it works. It doesn't have to involve crypto in terms of the payments, separating out the payment side. And then in terms of the on-chain state, a lot of the games stay on-chain and a lot of these things, again, it's also not really affected by the market. It's just like, hey, this is cool. We want to see people build on this. We want various things that you get with on-chain. It's like one worry I do have is ecosystem wise. It's always fun, especially because of the composability angle, right? It's always fun to see other teams doing well, innovating, expanding the design space. I think we've seen less of that over the past 2 years, and obviously with a lot of these experiments shutting down, a lot of them potentially never starting up because of the lack of funding. It's a missed what could have been. I think that's more of a longer term thing where it's having a healthier ecosystem, having shared network effects, having players try out various parts of the game, and then just being able to like, integrate other games learnings into your own design. That'd be nice to have. But again, it is what it is. So.
It is what it is. Yeah. Awesome, man. Thank you for doing this again. I think this is maybe our fifth session. Who knows? But yeah, excited to continue checking in on where you guys at. It's been a pleasure. Do you have any final thoughts you want to share with maybe the people who have been playing Cambria throughout all this time?
Just very excited. We have the community behind us. We have a lot of things that we're thinking about that we're trying to actively share. Again, some of this we can't share exact details, but we try to share as much as we can. Yeah, the team is super excited, very motivated to just make this shit happen. We actually build, actually ship. A lot of it's not gonna be perfect, but we're gonna try to do the best we can, especially with Islands where it's connected to more social things. You have the financial elements as well. There's just a lot of crunchy design space that we're really excited for. Really excited to continue shipping here.
Perfect.